Hello, you're listening to The Conversation with Tim McKain, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Craig Scott, who is an actor, activist, former practitioner of the Black Liberation Army, founder of Muscles, a student-led activist organization back in the 90s. Currently, he is a co-host of Trifecta Fight Podcast, and he also does short films, and his Instagram is Finding Meek Mill, because he's trying to get a song in his short film. So thank you very much, Craig, for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
So before the activism, before Craig Scott, the actor, who was Craig Scott?
Craig Scott was a little boy born in Baltimore City to a working class family. My stepfather, he worked at a place where they put different gases, oxygen, hydrogen, into canisters. And my mom, she at that time, I can't really remember exactly what she did, but she worked also. And we made it as much as we could. It was a working class family, but finances was always the issue, so we moved around a lot. And my biggest thing was I hated school. Yeah, public schools weren't exactly the greatest place to be. So at the age of 16, you were supposed to be allowed to drop out. So I was looking forward to that. I was like, listen, I'm gonna drop out. I'm gonna be done with this, because I'm going to school. I don't have the gear. I'm looking crazy. So it was just torture.
Yeah.
So one day we were sitting in music class, and the music teacher makes an announcement that the Baltimore School for the Arts was having an after-school program. Now, the Baltimore School for the Arts, the only reason why I kind of had some idea about what it might have been, because at that time there was a TV show on called Fame. And this was about a school for the arts in New York. And I used to watch the show all the time. So when he said School for the Arts, Baltimore, I said, wow, is this like Fame? So he's explaining, he said, after school they're going to teach acting, theater, music, visual arts, so forth, so on. You can audition, so forth. So I'm sitting right there in the class, and I'm thinking to myself, I said, man, I think I might have to try to do that. So I'm running through my head, what can I do? I don't dance. Plus, you got to wear tights. I didn't, that was something I wasn't going to do. I can't draw, can't paint. Couldn't sing, couldn't play an instrument. Theater, acting. Though I've never done that before either, but that was my only option. So I ran home that same day, and I literally wrote what I would later find out is called a monologue. And I wrote this little monologue about a guy down on his luck trying to get a job interview, and this would be my audition piece. And I wrote it, I memorized it, and I had to perform it for my mom. Because at that time, moms is not going to allow you to go out and embarrass them. So she wanted to see, I had never seen you act before, so show me that. So I sat down, and I'll never forget, she sat on her, she had a little pull-out bed couch. And I was man, just thinking about it. I was sitting in a chair like this, and I performed the monologue for her. And she liked it. She thought it was good or whatever. So I felt confident, and I went to the school, and I did the monologue, and they liked it. But I found out that according to the traditions, if you will, of acting or auditioning, that you're never supposed to use something that you wrote yourself as the piece to do an audition for. But I didn't know anything about that. But it was good enough to basically get me into that program. And because I could go to that program, the after school program, that's what kept me in school.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's basically how I got, to stay in school, and I got into the acting and theater.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So just talk about when you rehearsing in front of your mother, and ultimately getting that validation, and talk about her support for you during that process in your 4 years in the art school.
Wow. My my mom, she, like I said, you know, she was a working class woman, and she didn't like the idea of me studying to be an actor. That was like what, you know, how are you going to make money doing that? You follow me? And but I think she may have mentioned it to me maybe once. She didn't keep pressing on it, but later on I would find out that she had discussed this with the teachers and the administration you know, at the school. But though she had her own apprehensions about it, she was very, you know, very supportive. She would come to the plays. She would come, you know, check me out. She would bring my brothers and sisters with her, you know. So she was, you know, she was as supportive as she could be, you know what I mean. But her whole thing was, you know, what's the chance of you becoming Denzel? So what are you doing this for? You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, she was very, very, you know, very, very, very supportive of it. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in the beginning, when you were training to be an actor, who were some of the actors that you looked at and you wanted to emulate your style? Was there anyone in particular?
Well, as far as style, you know, I didn't really have that, but just as far as like admiration, going back to my mom again, she loved Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier was the Denzel of her era.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, right. You know, tall, dark, and handsome. You know, great actor. So he was like someone that I would just kind of inspired by, and you know, would think about it, or you know, referenced when it came to that. But you know, remember, I don't know anything about the techniques of it, so I didn't even think about a style or you know, emulating anybody's particular approach. But at that age, yeah, that's the only idol that we had, you know, dealing with acting was Sidney.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what was the training process like, and the relationships also that you developed in your 2 years at the art school?
Well, now at high school I was there for 4 years.
4 years.
And then when I went to Boston University in their School for the Arts, that was 2 years. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So my high school training was very thorough. It was centered around what they call ensemble.
Okay.
You know, the class freshman, sophomore, junior ensembles. That's how we were designated. And yeah, it was very thorough. Vocal training, physical training, you know, emoting, literature, you know, the whole 9 yards. And you know, I basically began to excel in it so much so that I became interested in directing. So they actually allowed me to direct some scenes and things like that, because the director of the department, he was the director.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I'm kind of, you know, motivated seeing him do his thing. And you know, he gave me the freedom to do that, and I could watch him and imitate him, and you know, and learn how to, you know, learn from that. So yeah, I learned a lot. Just my high school training gave me a lot.
Yes, sir. Were there any like black directors also that you looked at during the time? Was this before? Like,
This was Spike Lee. Who
Spike
else?
Lee?
Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
Spike Lee. Yeah,
Spike Lee,
Spike
that
Lee.
was the man. He was
When I was going to high school, and right after, this is when Spike Lee is, you know, doing his thing. She's Gotta Have It.
Yes.
That was the first like independent film that he did, and then School Days, Do the Right Thing. Like when School Days and Do the Right Thing came out, brother, I was like spending crazy money just going back and back.
School Days was great.
Yeah, man, Do the Right Thing, all of that. So Spike was the, you know, he was the filmmaker of my era that I, you know, really looked up to as far as a black filmmaker.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So transitioning into Boston University and ultimately excelling at Boston, you also started Muscles. So what led you to you know, start your career off in Boston University and ultimately lead to activism in Muscles?
Well, the seeds and the roots, interestingly, of my activism, which was, you know, a form of militant black nationalism. That was my, you know, that was my line. But the seed for that was actually planted by a friend of mine when I was in high school, Tupac Shakur. And at that time, we used to go to a friend of ours' house, and she had a basement with a pool table, And, you know, a bunch of us would hang out there. And I remember a couple of times me and Pac were sitting on the floor, and he's hitting me with names like Assata Shakur and talking about different, you know, groups. And at that time, I didn't know what these, you know, what this stuff was, because you know, it was foreign language, and you know, Tupac Amaru's, and I'm like, but I'm listening, you know what I mean? And so that seed was kind of planted there as well. In my senior year, I would perform in a play that had a very revolutionary and militant thing to it. The short version of the title was called Marat Side. And this is supposed to be about a bunch of inmates at an insane asylum who do a play about a French revolutionary by the name of Jean-Paul Marat. So that was the role that I was playing. So that had a lot of influence also on my more militant and revolutionary bent. So I had that in me already. So when I get to Boston University, now, you know, this is even a broader campus, you know, people from all over the world, literature, and all kinds of stuff. So at the end of my first year, a friend of mine, matter of fact, he's an actor now, Russell G. Jones, he gave me a book. The book was the Autobiography of Malcolm X.
Love that book.
I opened that book, and on my train ride back to Baltimore, I'm reading it. And this would be the first, like, novel-length book that I would read from cover to cover. I read the entire thing. I went through high school, you know, read the end, the middle, you know, just enough to pass the test. But that book there, I literally read from, you know, from cover to cover. And that really launched me, you know, solidified in me, you know, that militant line. So I would basically meet brothers that were of a similar mindset, and we got together and we put an organization together called Men of a Stolen Legacy, MOSL. So we would call it Muscle. And it was there, and basically we got together in order to, we were big on pushing, trying to incorporate African American studies in the core curriculum of the university. That was a big movement at the time. We were also pushing the anti-apartheid divestiture movement that was going on. Because actually at that time, Boston University was still doing business with South Africa while they were, you know, still under the apartheid regime. Mandela was still in prison, you know, the whole 9 yards. So we would actually stage a protest rally, and one of the ambassadors from the ANC, which is the organization that Mandela basically was a part of, he came and he spoke at the rally, and various other leaders, and it was basically to, you know, put some pressure on the university to divest in South Africa. So that was something that our organization did as well. And then on the weekends, we would tutor kids. Yeah, we would tutor kids in Roxbury. Roxbury is the little inner city area in Boston where most of the, a lot of African American or Black American people were living. So we would work with the kids out of that neighborhood, you know, on the weekends. So this, you know, that was the type of stuff that Muscle was about. But my most memorable memory about that is this is my first time meeting Kwame Ture. Now, Kwame Ture was formerly known as Stokely Carmichael. So we hear, oh man, listen, Kwame is speaking at, I forget whatever university he was speaking at. So all of the members of Muscle, we said, we're gonna go down, we're gonna meet this brother. So we go and we sit down and we listen to his lecture. And as he's lecturing, people are standing up in the crowd waving Israeli flags. So they're like protesting about this man speaking. This is the first time I had ever heard him speak, so I didn't know what the content of his, you know, thing was going to be, but they didn't like it. But having seen that, I'm like, okay, wow, this is some serious stuff is going on right here. So after the lecture was over, we actually we helped there were some Nation of Islam members there who were doing his security. So we helped them escort him out of the lecture hall into another room. So when we're in that little room, we get to introduce ourselves and talk with him. And we tell them, hey, you know, we are part of Muscle, Men of the Stolen Legacy. So he says, Men of the Stolen Legacy. Oh yeah, you read the book, The Stolen Legacy? So now we had heard of the book, and because we heard of that book and that title, that's why we used it.
Right.
So when he asks us, have you read the book? We're looking at each other like, okay, no one in the group had actually read the damn book. So we're sitting here with like this, revolutionary scholar, just embarrassed as you don't, as I don't know what. So that was my first, meeting with him. As the years went on, I would, meet him several times after that. But that was like my biggest thing, memory as far as working with the brothers there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I have a two-part question. So, for one, when you really read the Malcolm X book, the Autobiography of Malcolm X, and then ultimately meeting Stokely Carmichael, why does Malcolm X book, like, it seems like it has like this very, very powerful meaning for young black men, young black people, and then also, I want you to speak on your relationship with Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, and how it shaped you as an activist and as a man.
The Autobiography of Malcolm X was a game changer because he literally, he's describing a lot of the conditions and lifestyles and experiences that black men, even in my time, we went through. Being poor, being locked in a ghetto situation, the crime, all of that. So that kind of you can relate to him just off of that. So then to read about how he grew into this major revolutionary leader from that was absolutely fascinating. Like almost like unbelievable. So I was just captivated, you know what I mean? And also he was the first person to introduce me to some of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam. So that was fascinating. Like, the white man is the devil. Okay, that's, what I'm saying? So, these are bold statements and bold concepts and, the whole, that whole theology. So it was just so much, and then to hear or to know prior to reading that he was killed, I knew that much about him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just took it to a whole other level. So that just changed my whole disposition, my attitude, because he basically was letting us know that it's legitimate for you to be upset about the condition that you're in. And it's legitimate for you to want to change that condition. And it's legitimate for you to use violence if you have to. So this was, who else was talking like that? Malcolm was like the biggest voice for that sort of approach. And so that was just, that was it. So Kwame Ture was someone who was alive that I actually met, who was personifying that same principle. It was the same thing. Because he coined the phrase black power. Right. And everyone understood what black power meant. You follow me? In other words, it meant power in every aspect of life. There wasn't a thing where they were going to step away from the need for militant self-defense if necessary. Right. And so he was, he like I said, he was a living personification of what Malcolm was teaching. So that just made it that much more influential. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, actually, when it comes to black power, what is black power? We like you say, you talked about black power. What did black power mean back in the day, and what do you think black power means now?
Well, when Stokely coined the phrase, basically it was the concept that the black community should have control over their own resources. They should control the physical space in which they're living. They should control the economics of where they are, and they should control their own security, the security of their actual physical security, and that having your own control over those things, that is what power was. Political, economic, military, educational, those things should be in your hands, and if they're in your hands, then you can say that you have power. You follow? So that definition still applies today. And this is why we in the African American community are still dissatisfied.
Right.
Because that has not yet manifested. That power has not yet come into fruition. We're getting a little closer, but it just isn't there yet.
Sir, yes, sir. So, what were some of the plans that Muscle had to help that cause of economic empowerment, of do for self? What are some of the things that you co-founded? What were some of the things that you guys were planning at the time?
Well, our main thing was basically education and what we call raising consciousness, awareness. So how we did that, like we would bring in, we brought in Bobby Seale. We brought Bobby Seale in. We, like I said, we organized the rally for divestiture. So we were doing activities, like that as an attempt to raise consciousness. We would also hold study groups. We would get into African American history, teaching about economics. Like there was this one brother we had, that was like his main thing, was finance, business. So when we would get to that point in our meeting, he would take over and try to teach us, educate us about starting a business, incorporating, doing things of that sort. So at that stage, and in dealing with MOSL or Muscle, it was primarily an education push or agenda.
Got you. So, since the time you've been as a student activist, as an actor, what are some of the lessons that you've learned just from yourself, from the experience you've gained to now? What's the progression been like for you as an activist, as an actor, as a man?
Well, as an actor, of course, that development comes just from, acting, performing, doing various performances, learning, well, you could have done this better or done this different, things of that sort. But as far as learning with regard to, the blending of those two things, activism and acting, yeah, I learned a big lesson with that. I would return to Baltimore, Maryland after being kicked out, basically, of Boston University because of all of the activism that I was involved in the school. And I would return and I would write a play. And the name of the play was Can a Nigga Do Shakespeare? And the premise of the play was to challenge the stereotype that black actors didn't have the intellectual wherewithal to handle what they call elevated text, which Shakespearean text is considered elevated text. And I was basically trying to challenge that whole concept. Also within that play, I'm also paying homage to a lot of militant black leaders, going all the way back to, what's the brother I was telling you about, the one that started all of this, Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey, yes.
Started Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm, Farrakhan, the whole 9 yards. So
Yes,
I'm
sir.
incorporating both of those things within that play. And due to the provocative nature of the title, the local news covered it for like 2 days. They went out in the street asking just random people on the street, what do you think about this title, Can a Nigga Do Shakespeare? What do you think it's about? And to the credit of the brothers and sisters that were in the city of Baltimore, like they got it, they understood. You know what I mean? They were like, oh yeah, I can understand, we're talking about discrimination in the arts and theater and things of this sort. But they never saw the play. But they understood just from the title, the general spirit, of it. So the same local news came and interviewed me. And during the course of that interview, I made a very critical statement about the public school system. And boy, did I get in trouble for that. So like the next day, they're on the phone, hey man, you gotta come down here, we need to talk to you about this, so forth and so on. And that's when I was really kind of introduced to how the powers that be, kind of behind the scenes really work. When you blend activism with your theater or with your art, with your music, with your rap, like Tupac Shakur, for instance. That's, my opinion, that's what led to his early demise, because he was incorporating militant black, concepts of politics into his music. So that was the main lesson I learned, is that there's consequences to marrying your political activism with your art.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So now, currently, you are co-host for Trifecta Fight
Oh,
Podcast.
yeah,
where we,
baby,
we
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
sports all the time. But you also are doing a short film. You've actually finished a short film. Just talk about your experience doing the short film. You were voiceover, and then now you're a character in the film.
Oh yeah, right. I got out of prison in May of 2020, and the friend I was telling you about, Russell G. Jones, who gave me the Malcolm X book, he would hook me up with this gig to do voiceover for a short film called May I Tell You Something. He sent me the script, and when he sent me the script was about interviews that survivors of the 1971 Attica Revolt had given. These are the brothers that survived it, and they're recounting in various interviews, what occurred. So when I read it, I automatically, recognized it because I was familiar with that, with that history and all of that. So, so when I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do this film. So, we ended up doing that film. So we did it. She sent me a trailer for the film, and trailer was okay, but it was a little kind of bland. So I was like, you know what, we need some music to this thing. So prior to me getting out, I had heard about how the rapper Meek Mill was incorporating and picking up the whole prison reform movement issue, and he was pushing it and marrying his celebrity to the issue. So I thought to myself, I said, this would be a perfect artist to use. So let me find something, music from him to put to this trailer.
Absolutely.
So I'm going through his catalog, and I come across his piece called Other Side of America. Perfect. So I send it to the director. I say, listen, put this in the trailer. She puts it in perfect. And from right there, I said, listen, we've got to get the rights and the licensing to use this. So I started the process of trying to, get in touch with or find out how you do this. So you go on YouTube and Google, and they tell you this whole thing about, oh, just call the record label, call the publishers and write them a letter, and you start the negotiation for the pricing. No, it's not that easy. It's not that simple. Being a person that's not an established person in that industry, for you to just make a cold call or send a cold letter, listen, So, I did all of that. Went on the Twitter accounts, the IG accounts, nothing. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to document the ups and downs that I'm going through to try to get to this man and try to get this song done. Yes, so that's why I came up with the documentary, Finding Meek Mill.
Yes, sir.
And what I do is I post different, almost like confessional type style postings, recounting all of the things that I'm going through, trying to get this film promoted and supported by Meek Mill.
Yes, sir.
So that's where I am right now.
And I was just going to tell you that last thing. I think you're doing a great job with that. It's almost like a documentary.
Yeah. That's
it
what
really
I'm trying
is.
to do.
It's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing. I can't hope the best for you with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Instagram, Finding Meek Mill.
Finding Meek Mill.
Check it out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Scott, for your time.
Man, thank you, man. I really appreciate this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Conversation with Tim McKain.